Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with my weekly podcast. Pretty fired up about this podcast because, number one, Ohio State is 8-0, just coming off a 38-7 ransacking in the rain of highly touted Wisconsin. Was Wisconsin overrated? Was Ohio State underrated? We'll get into that as this show progresses with my soon-to-be named secret star this week of the show, and then also later with Boston Ward as we break down some things. I'll have a couple of plays from Saturday's game that I'm going to break down on the video screen, which I very much enjoy. And yes, one of them is one of the 4 sacks by Chase Young, who's now 0.5 of a sack away from Vernon Golston's school record, 14 sacks for a season. But I digress. Getting back to the Ohio State-Wisconsin game, one of the stars of that game clearly was J.K. Dobbins, who he will tell you with his supporting cast, the Ohio State offensive line. But J.K. Dobbins with 163 yards rushing, 58 yards receiving, over 200 yards total offense against the number one, at least going into that game, the number one defense in the country and number one defense against the rush. And what a game, what a performance. It reminded me of a game from way back when, back in the 1995 season, when a guy rushed for over 300 yards and scored 4 or 5 touchdowns in kind of similar. Well, I don't know if it wasn't raining, but it was an interesting game in the old Ohio Stadium before they expanded it. That guy, he went on to win the Heisman Trophy that year. The fellow's name was Eddie George. I don't know if you folks remember him or not. And, of course, I'm being facetious. I know you do. And Eddie, by the way, is considered to be my special guest this week. Eddie, how are you doing?
Sam, I'm doing great, man. Thank you for the introduction.
Well, I don't know if to introduce you as a former football player or a rising, budding thespian who I think is extremely – I don't know if you're underrated. I think you've gotten great reviews by your acting, but you can star in my life story anytime you want, brother.
I would try to get it right. I don't know if I can pull that one off. Bro.
Well, it'd be a stretch because you have to get my accent down. That'd be the only tough thing. The rest of it, man, let's go for it. It'd be like having Dwayne Johnson star as Eddie George. You know what I mean? But
absolutely.
Hey, real quick, Eddie, just your first impressions of this 2000. I know you pay attention. This 2019 Ohio State team to this point with a brand new head coach in Ryan Day, a brand new starting quarterback in Justin Fields, and then, of course, what J.K. Dobbins has done to carry on the legacy. He became the first player, first running back in Ohio State history to rush for 1,000 yards or more in his first 3 seasons on the team. We'll get to that in a minute. But just what's just stood out about this team to you 8 games in?
Well, they've always been talented, under Urban Meyer. I think you looked at the roster. When Urban first inherited this team, they didn't have a lot of depth. They had to, really establish a different type of culture. He put his thumbprint on it. Mm-hmm. I think through the years, the cupboard has been stocked across the board. Mm-hmm. When I look at this team, they're playing at a high level, a high standard. Their quality of play is a championship caliber play. Mm-hmm. You look at the various units from defensive line to linebacker, defensive backs, offensive line, receivers, tight end. They have everything you want. There's not a weakness you can look on their team and say, man, we can attack this area. And they're playing focused. You don't see those lapses that we were accustomed to seeing a couple years back, where they came in against a team that they should have beaten by 3 or 4 touchdowns and they'll lose. The lack of focus. I think the locker room is different. Under Urban Meyer, it was a lot highly stressful. There's nothing wrong with that, but under Day, it's a completely different locker room. It's more relaxed. He treats the players like men, but they have a deal of responsibility. So they're just dialed in, and I think that they are on a mission to prove to the country that they're the best team in the country this year.
In your opinion, what is the one thing offensively that has stood out to you more than any? I think the idea of having a dual threat at quarterback again, but a guy at maybe the best dual threat quarterback they've ever had. You might I would think you might agree with me on that. And Justin Fields, just from a pure talent standpoint, but then also the way he's gotten better with each week. But what is just the one thing in particular offensively that's caught your eye?
It's his Justin Fields. He is the perfect quarterback for Ryan Day's offense. Well, what I mean by that, Dwayne Haskins had arm talent. I mean, he was just a prolific passer. He was well deserving of winning the Heisman Trophy, in my opinion, with the numbers he put up last year.
Yeah.
Just a dominant force inside the pocket. But for what they like to do, and where offense has evolved to nowadays, you have to have a quarterback that can extend plays, that can run, that can throw it, and that opens up everything within the offense. And the Fields does just that. He's in between what J.T. Barrett was and Dwayne Haskins. He can run and throw, and he has the leadership capability, so he makes it open. And I think it's really impacted and affected the run game with J.K. Dobbins. Now you have to account for Justin Fields not just beating you with his arm, but getting on the edge and making things happen in the run game.
Yeah.
So with that being said, this offense is lethal. They have tight ends, they have receivers, they have depth on the offensive line. And this week against Wisconsin, I was curious to see how they were going to hold up against a vaulted defensive line, the best test they were going to see all year long, and they did fairly well. They gave up a few sacks here and there. But for the most part, when they really leaned on them through 3 or 4 quarters, Wisconsin was not able to hold up, and that's what I see. It was really thoughtful approach to how they were able just to wear down Wisconsin, which was not easy to do.
Yeah. I mean, as I pointed out in one of the plays I'm going to break down here in a little while after you're done is they even ran the stretch play a couple of times. Almost they were sticking it in Wisconsin's ear, It's famous stretch, but, the wide zone, whatever you want to call it, and he got out there.
Yeah.
And which gets me to this guy, J.K. Dobbins. You got to watch, you pay attention. You saw him as a freshman. You saw him last year as a sophomore. Even though he broke 1,000 yards, he kind of struggled in the sense of he was playing with Mike Weber. His idea was I got to hit a home run every time I'm in there just to show that I'm worth, maybe being the number one guy. You've seen him settle down this year, play with more patience. And Eddie, an example I like to use, I know you understand what I'm saying. 1994, I watched you, your first time full-time starter, at running back. And I would watch you occasionally just run up into the back of like offensive linemen and stuff, like you were just really just raring to go, and the patience wasn't there early.
Right.
It had developed. And I've told people, man, your senior year, you were a totally different back in the sense of the patience you showed to let things develop in front of you and then take advantage of it. And obviously, you became the most prolific back in Ohio State history that year from a rushing standpoint, which also led you to the Heisman Trophy. I've seen a similar development with J.K. How close am I in an analogy from your junior or senior year and J.K. from last year to this year?
Well, you're absolutely correct. For J.K., watching, I thought that he was very explosive as a freshman. I thought that he had all the ability and capability of being one of the best backs to ever come through the school because of his ability to hit the home run, make people miss, and run in between the tackles. I mean, he's an asset in the passing game as well. And you're 1,000% correct in the fact that last year was a bit of a struggle. He spent a little time. And again, the offense with the quarterback was completely different. Teams were able to lock in and focus in on stopping the run because of the 8-man front. They knew that the quarterback wasn't a threat to run or take it on the edge or take over the game in that regard, running the football. So now, again, with Justin Fields, it's really helped open his game, but that's not taking away the growth or the evolution of J.K. Dobbins. It's really allowed him to be more relaxed, be more patient, not feel rushed to get a big home run because he doesn't feel like he's going to get those opportunities. He feels now he can take the hard 1-2 yard runs that they're going to only get better as time wears on, as he wears on teams, much as you saw last Saturday and certainly throughout the year.
Yeah. Hey, Eddie, explain this to me. I've covered football for a long time, since 1973 when I first became a sports writer, but I've been paying attention to it since 1961. And the thing I've always marveled at is running backs, because I know a lot of people get a lot of a pub for this and that and the other different positions they play, but running back has always intrigued me from the mindset you have to have. It's almost like being Joe Frazier as a boxer. You know you're going to take some licks to get maybe a few uppercuts in there. And but it's just also amazing to me. Archie Griffin was about 5'9", 180 pounds when he played. You look like a Greek god when you played. No offense, but that is what you look like. 6'3", 225 pounds, whatever it's your fighting weight. J.K. Dobbins is 5'9", 200 and maybe 15 pounds. Yet, what is the common denominator for all you guys? I mean, I didn't name all of the great running backs I've seen, but is the common denominator, is it heart? Is it toughness? What sets y'all apart, you think, from the average human being?
Well, the running back position is very different from any other position on the field. The quarterback, outside the quarterback, the running back is going to touch the ball more so than anybody else. And he controls the game. And that being said, it's just not about a skill set of making people miss or just getting first downs. It's imposing your will, and it's running from a possessed spirit.
Yeah.
It's a very spiritual position. So I think that's the common denominator. Ezekiel Elliott has it. He runs to impose his will. He'll take over a game. He runs from the spirit. R.C. Griffin the same way.
Yeah.
Robert Smith, Raymond Harris, Carlos Hyde. I mean, the list goes on and on. Everybody that's had success at that position at Ohio State, and really, all great running backs, they run with the relentless spirit. And it's playing linebacker from the running back position, but you approach it differently. You're aggressive. You seek out punishment. You seek to impose defenders, and you wear defenses out, and by spiritually taking their will from them. That's the biggest difference.
How about Master Teague III? Can you see potential there?
Oh, yes. No question. His speed is ridiculous. Once he gets to the open, he's gone.
Yeah.
He has the size. He has the speed. He's a one-cut and downhill kind of running back. And he's another guy that, I've watched him develop over the last couple of years, where his freshman year, he really was just a freshman.
Yeah.
But now it seems as though the game has slowed down quite a bit for him. And he's able to come downhill a lot better.
Yeah, that's crazy. How that's the great thing about covering college football for me that I've always enjoyed. I remember, giving you some words of encouragement after that Illinois game as a freshman. When you had and I haven't usually done that, but you could see the potential there. Speaking of linebackers, I just keep remembering when Penn State was recruiting you, and I think Joe Paterno wanted to make you into a linebacker, and I'm just thinking, man, if Eddie had gone to Penn State, what would have happened next, But,
right.
Real quick, Eddie, let's get out of here. What about this team? Does this team have the wherewithal, in your opinion, to go all the way? And you know what I'm saying. I mean, to be in the college football playoff, to take care of business in the Big Ten, be in the college football playoff. What is your sense of what you've seen of this team to this point? Does it have that capability compared to the other teams? I'm sure you've paid attention to a certain extent to Alabama, to Clemson, to others. What's your sense?
Yeah, I look at this team. I see they are prepared and really approaching that point where they're the best team in the country. I think when you look at their roster, they're the most complete team in the country from every position, and how they're playing. They're very consistent every single week. This is probably, Tim, is probably the best defense that I've seen in Ohio State history. And in the spread era, so to speak, because you're forced to defend every blade of grass nowadays. You're not playing inside, a telephone booth, and you're certainly the in between the hashes type of football that's gone. You're forced to protect every space on the field, and this team just seems to have done that. They've simplified things defensively. I think Chase Young is a bona fide superstar. One of the best defensive players I've seen, a dominant defensive player that I've seen in quite some time at Ohio State. We've had a few with the Bosa brothers, Alonzo Spellman, Dan Wilkinson. The list goes on. Andy Katzenmoyer. You throw him in that category. He's been very dominant, and I think he's only going to get better. So that being said, you mix in the talent and the focus of this team and the quality of play, how they're playing every single week. In my opinion, they're on the trajectory to be, in the 14 playoff. But if they complete the season the way that I think that they can, it certainly could be one of the best teams we've ever seen at Ohio State from top to bottom.
I think you have an ensuite. in the Heisman house. Those commercials. I think you have an ensuite. Does Chase Young have a shot? I mean, who of this team, if you were starting right now a campaign for a Heisman Trophy consideration, who on this team would you push?
I would push Chase Young right now. J.K. Dobbins next. Those two are my 1A and 1B guys. And the reason I say Chase Young is because he is the most dominant player in college football, period, offense or defensively.
Yeah.
Certainly he can't score touchdowns right now other than, getting a turnover or interception or a forced fumble, but how he disrupts the game. Can he stop the run? Yes. Can he rush the passer? Yes. Can he take over a game? Yes. The check mark across the board. He leads a vaulted defense. He's gotten better since his freshman year. And I think that now he's just scratching the surface on what he can truly do. You cannot single this guy up. I mean, he's changing the way offenses are approaching Ohio State. Wisconsin dared him to rush the passer by singling him up without any help. And guess what? Yeah. He was disruptive. So now guess what other teams are going to do? They're going to slide to him. They're going to bring tight ends to him. They're going to create an offense centered around not allowing Chase Young to be disruptive and take their chances with the other guys. Making plays. So that being said, I've got to lean toward that. I haven't seen a defensive player dominate like this since Jadeveon Clowney did his sophomore year at South Carolina.
Excellent analogy. And number two, if you watched Saturday, and I know you did, all of a sudden Chase Young's in the middle of the defense. They're moving him around. Wisconsin had to take a timeout because Ohio State knows, Greg Madison and Larry Johnson and Jeff Hafley, came in from the San Francisco 49ers as the co-defensive coordinator. They are thinking ahead of time, about ways to keep him singled up if they can, right? I mean, that stands out. Go ahead.
And that's the key, is that they recognize that, and offenses recognize that. If you're Ohio State, you say, hey, how do we defend this guy?
Yeah.
How do we defend this predator? And based off of that, they're going to say, okay, we got to think 3 or 4 steps ahead, and they have him play linebacker, have him come from different parts of the field, and because he's athletic enough to do that. And I think his game has evolved to the point where he can take on that responsibility. Both mentally and physically and spiritually speaking, he's prepared for that. So you throw that into the mix, and if he stays focused and truly locked in, and he continues to have the games that he's had, especially with Penn State coming up and Michigan coming up as well, 2 high-profile games, he's getting the attention from different voters around the country, different media members that, hey, he could possibly win the Heisman because he is the most dominant figure force in the NFL. In college football. And if you were to look at it, fast forward to the NFL draft, he might be the number 1 pick in the country. Yeah. So I think when you look at that, if he warrants that much respect as the possibly the number 1 overall, he definitely deserves to be number 1 in terms of Heisman votes because he's the most outstanding player in the country, in my opinion, right now.
Eddie George, I really appreciate it. What a slice it's been, man, and keep up the good work and everything that you do. And I always enjoy any of your acting situations to get a. People don't understand that there is life after football. You understood that from the get-go, which always impressed me. And I, I even I retweeted a couple things you did earlier this year by helping out some youth leagues and just making people's days by showing up in their lives. And you've got a pretty good life going, right, Eddie?
Man, I'm living a blessed life, living my best life right now, Tim.
Yeah.
It's been truly awesome just with the game of football, how that's opened up so many different doors for me. The talents that have just emerged over the years, from acting to entrepreneurship to mentorship. I'm just trying to be a blessing to others, man. And that's it.
Eddie, anybody can give you an opportunity, but it's what you do with it. And that's what's always impressed me about you. You always take it by the throat. Man, appreciate it, Eddie. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Tim. I appreciate you, man.
You got it. We'll be back in a moment, ladies and gentlemen. I'll break down a couple of plays for you, and we'll move on to the Boston Ward segment, one of the other more anticipated segments of this show every week. But like I said, we'll be back in just a moment.
Hey, college football fans, it's Zach Bourne here. You need to check out BetDSI.com. BetDSI is a great way to use your sports knowledge to make some extra cash. That's right. BetDSI is the top-rated online sportsbook. They've been paying winners for over 20 years. The reason they've been around that long is because they have got the fastest payouts in the industry. Plus, the user interface and mobile site is the best in the business. Play, win, and get paid. It's that simple. It doesn't matter if it's college football, the NFL, NBA, NHL, UFC, esports, reality TV, virtually anything. You can bet it. You can bet on it at betdsi.com and get paid right now. There's no better way to add some excitement to games that you already are watching. Check out their live betting, where you can bet on games throughout the entire matchup, every play, and every minute until the end. BetDSI has a special deal for Lettermen Row fans. Use the promo code ROW100 to get a 100% bonus match. That's more than double. That's right, more than double your money to start winning today. Once again, go to betdsi.com and use promo code ROW100 and get this limited 100% bonus offer to make some extra cash on the sports you know and love. BetDSI promo code ROW100. Now back to the show.
Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is my favorite part of the Tim May podcast, and you'll see why here in a minute, because I love breaking down plays. This is Ohio State versus Wisconsin on Saturday, a.k.a. the Chase Young sack attack afternoon. And this play in particular just showed how much trouble Wisconsin had trying to figure out how to block Chase Young. In some respects, they hardly blocked him at all, and this play is a great example of that. As you can see, Wisconsin spread the field to the left side with three wide receivers. They've got a tackle set up to handle Chase Young right off the bat. They've got a running back in the backfield to the left side of quarterback Jack Cohn. You got to figure that guy's involved in pass rush pickup, right, or blitz pickup. But as the play goes on, as this play ensues, you'll see that really you're trying to figure out what were they trying to do with Chase Young. With Haskell Garrett lined up just to his left, Chase Young is lined up wide of the left tackle, Wisconsin's left tackle. Now, Spencer, let this play run once, and we'll get into the brass tacks of it. Chase Young shoves backwards, cuts in between the guard and the tackle, and I'm not even sure he got a sack on this play, because I think Jack Cohn took one for the team. Now let's break this down a little bit in little increments here. You can see they're running back to the left of Jack Cohn. You see the left tackle is leaning in toward Haskell Garrett, and then the right guard is sitting there. They're both eyeballing the same guy. But as it turns out, Haskell Garrett makes a move to the inside that the guard has to deal with in the center. And let's run this just a couple of steps right there. You can see the left guard is taking on Haskell Garrett. The center is eyeballing Haskell Garrett. This is going to end up being a double team on Haskell Garrett and a single team on the best pass rusher in college football. 71 has nothing for Chase Young, as you'll see. Chase Young feigns like he's going to the outside, cuts inside, and watch the quarterback, Jack Cohn, see what's coming and take cover. Okay. in the NFL, that's definitely a sack because Chase Young's the first one to touch him after he hits the ground. But what was most intriguing about this play, and stop it right there, Spencer, back it up just a little bit, is you can see the one running back, the guy that can maybe throw some help, some shade the left tackle's way. He decides to step into the abyss, which was the middle and the right side, to looking for a possible blitz, I guess, and he ends up helping block no one. Back it up and run it full speed one more time. This is unbelievable. The best pass rusher in college football gets almost a free pass to the quarterback. Now let's back it up one more segment. Right here. Let's run this play one more time and you'll see what I'm talking about. The running back steps to the right, looking for somebody. Somebody's got to be coming blitzing, right? Tyreek Smith's right here. He's tied up with the tight end. The running back, what's he looking? He's looking, nobody there. He touches no one. Meanwhile, like I said, the best pass rusher in college football gets almost a subway ride to the quarterback. Now let's advance it on through, Spencer, to the next play, which I thought was sort of a pie in the face of Wisconsin. There you go. This is J.K. Dobbins on his way to 163 yards rushing. This is a 28-yard play. And as it goes, as you can see what this is almost a pie in the face, like I said, to the Wisconsin ethic, because it is, in essence, a stretch play to the left side. J.K. Dobbins takes the deep handoff from Justin Fields. The offensive line just fires out in zone blocking, hitting the first man you see, and if there's no man there, go to the second level. You see Jonah Jackson going to the second level right there, number 73, and all of a sudden the defense parts and J.K. Dobbins shoots through. I mean, what a tour de force as this game developed. What a tour de force by the offensive line and J.K. Dobbins going against a team that reputedly had the best offensive line, the best running back maybe in college football. I think J.K. Dobbins and the Ohio State offensive line put a stop to that talk. Let's back it up one more time and just really sort of enjoy watching an offensive line get the job done against the number one rush defense in the country, at least going into the game. Stop it right there. Everybody's got a man. I mean, it looks like probably the only person that could stop J.K. Dobbins on this play would be one of his own offensive linemen, maybe him running into him. But as the play develops, all you need is a seam for J.K. Dobbins. And always, as my guest Eddie George and I were talking about earlier, these guys, a running back has to have speed, he has to have guile, he has to have vision. But you know what? You got to have guts. You got to have guts to cut it up into like a gauntlet like this and to know that there may be sunshine on the other side. J.K. Dobbins has proven, along with everything else, he's got guts to be a big-time running back in major college football, and that's why we're talking about him so highly now. I think he's played his way at least into the conversation, definitely for best running back in the country. He only trails Chuba Hubbard of Oklahoma State right now nationally. Trails him by like 150 yards. But what a huge game for J.K. Dobbins, 163 yards rushing, 58, I think, receiving, a couple of three big-time receptions in that game that kept drives going. J.K. Dobbins is starting to have a hell of a year. Anyway, that's my two plays for the week, and I appreciate you watching. And we'll be back in a moment with Boston Ward as we look at what Ohio State has going for it as it heads into this off week, its second off week in 3 weeks, and then where they can move forward, headed toward what looks like a sleeper schedule before they take on Penn State and Michigan to wrap up the regular season. We'll be back in just a moment. And we're back.
Hello.
Boston, you got to see Boston Ward here. Magically appears on my set at this time every week. Ooh. So really it shouldn't be a big surprise. You heard my conversation with Eddie George, and especially at the end of what he thinks of Chase Young and his Heisman possibilities. I mean, like he pointed out, if people are projecting you as possibly the number one pick in the draft coming up, you keep making plays like you did on national television, as we've talked about, the most highly rated game of the week last week. Ohio State's 38-7, as I call it, ransacking in the rain, romping the rain of Wisconsin, the number one defense in the country, and it's great running attack with Jonathan Taylor. If you keep racking up kind of appearances like that, it's not that as far-fetched as it may have looked about 6 weeks ago of Chase Young not only being in New York City, but possibly being definitely in the running.
I'm glad that I started driving the bandwagon like 6 weeks ago, and everyone thought I was crazy to say that he was the best player in college football, that he needed to be in the Heisman race. But you've heard me say that a bunch of times. I really, truly believe that at some point a defensive guy is going to break through. And why not this guy? Because he is undoubtedly, 100%, bar none, the most dominant player in the sport right now today. Now, there's still a month.
When an Eddie George says that,
Well, it doesn't matter as much if I say it, but yes, other people,
right. I'm with you. You have backing now.
The broadcast crew on Saturday, the Fox crew, the Big Noon guys, they were effusive in their praise. You had, obviously, Urban Meyer's going to back him, but, the players that were there, Reggie Bush, Brady Quinn, Matt Leinart, Joel Klatt, Gus Johnson talking throughout. These guys have Heisman votes, and now they're talking about Chase Young being number one on their ballot. That matters. I mean, you vote. For whatever reason, I haven't got mine back in Ohio. I've lost it twice. Had it in Wyoming, had it in Tennessee. Don't have it in Ohio, even though I've been here for 8 years now. Whatever, I don't care. That just means that I can sit here and talk about Chase Young's candidacy even more without it being on my ballot. I believe that he should go to New York. I still don't know. It would take probably another game like Saturday, maybe even against Penn State, Big Ten championship game if they get there, to probably win it. Because the quarterbacks are always going to have that built-in advantage. Another one, whether it's Justin Fields, or his own teammate J.K. Dobbins, Joe Burrow, what he's doing, if Tua can play through the ankle injury, whatever, quarterbacks are going to make it tough for Chase Young. But if he's not in New York, there is something seriously wrong.
Something seriously wrong here. What's that from him? Bill Murray. Bottom line, I agree with you. This is what's funny about defensive players, though, and defensive ends in particular. I've always said they've kind of got a luxury going for them, which is you make 3 or 4 plays a game and people notice.
Yeah.
That may be the only 3 or 4 plays you make in the entire game. Now, that's not – Chase Young was a factor all day. He was a factor against the run. He came from the backside and tackled a possible play to the left side, of Jonathan Taylor early in that game.
What about the screen?
Yeah, on the screen, he blows up screens better than a wrecking crew on an HGTV show when they're redoing a house. I mean, he just blows up screens for a living, and it's crazy what he brings in that regard. But the point is, they are impact plays. I mean, the 2 strip sacks. He didn't just sack people.
No.
I don't know how many strip sacks has he got now. Is it 6?
I think it's 5.
5,
but
yeah.
It could be 6. And
those flip games.
And that's when I had that conversation 2 weeks ago now during the previous off date with Larry Johnson and Chase Young. They're like, they're looking at ways that he can improve as a pass rusher. He never stops. I said, well, yeah, you can impact a game with a sack, and they're big, but how can you really change the game? And they said, well, the next step for him is a strip sack. And that's like the thing they wanted to add to their arsenal. You see him sometimes where he's not going for a kill shot on the quarterback, and he could. And you've seen it. He is targeting the football. He wants to get the football out more than he wants to make vicious contact with the quarterback. And sometimes he misses sacks because of that. I think whether it was what was the one before the off day? I'm trying to think back.
I know
Michigan
what you're
State.
talking about. Yeah.
Michigan State,
yeah.
Where he whiffs on a couple. Maybe he was even Miami, Ohio. But sometimes he misses them because he wants to get that strip sack, and he knows even if he misses that teammates are coming.
Yeah.
And so his ability to get those, if he scoops one up and scores another Heisman moment, I mean, that'll clinch it. But the way he plays against Penn State and Michigan is going to determine it. What I think would be really funny, bear watching, because you know that Jerry Emig and the SID department, they can't pick one of these 3 guys. But let's say Ryan Day gets really into it, puts him in on offense, tight end, has Justin Fields throw him a play action touchdown or something. Maybe sometimes that's what it takes to really kick it into another level.
Well, I'm from the camp. If you had to label me, I'm from the why not camp in that regards. Like I told you last week, I don't know why you don't put DeJuan Jones in the backfield on short yardage, just for the fun of it. But just to see what happens when you DeJuan Jones coming in there behind Thayer Munford and Jonah Jackson and Josh Myers off the left side, or behind Wyatt Davis and Brandon Bowen on the right side. That would be a defense having to handle more than half a ton of humanity
Right.
before it ever gets to a 5'9", 215-pound J.K. Dobbins. I mean, I don't understand why you don't do stuff like that.
Yeah, and especially, they're never going to admit this publicly, but when you're playing Maryland and Rutgers, the Heisman voters are going to think, oh, well, you got 2 sacks against Maryland, so what? You got 3 sacks and a half against Rutgers. Lots of guys can do that. So if you want to get attention on this guy in games that Ohio State is going to absolutely dominate, do something creative. And they don't have to do this. Like, it might not be that important to Ryan Day or Larry Johnson to send Chase Young to New York, although I think it is. They want him to go there. Do you do it at the expense of the other guys on offense? Yeah, you could maybe see it that way, and you're treating him differently. But he is different, and this is a rare opportunity to send a defensive player to contend and win the Heisman.
Think about the feather in the cap this would be for one of the great defensive line coaches of all time, Larry Johnson.
Oh, my goodness.
Who all he's gotten is praise, building praise since he's been at Ohio State. And, yeah, guys have to show up with the raw material. I mean, the Bosa brothers showed up with the right stuff. Now I'm getting into my favorite movies and books. But the Bosa brothers showed up with the right stuff. So did Chase Young, but in a different way. Mm-hmm. And there is no doubt, if you watch Chase Young as a freshman and you watch him today, how much his game has changed under the tutelage of Larry Johnson. And number 3, if you're really paying attention to college football and the guys who make a difference, you can't argue with the idea that a man who has the ball in his hands on every play, the quarterback, is probably the most important player on your team.
Sure.
Doesn't necessarily make him the most valuable player on your team, but he is the most important. But then as you push back and you look at guys who change games, like Eddie George was talking about, he changes. Chase Young has changed some games right in front of your eyes with a blocked field goal attempt, for example, earlier this year. I mean, he's really into all of that. And then if you could just – but here's the thing. What's really set up, and Eddie George was talking about it, he didn't say this like I'm going to maybe more succinctly. He had that great moment on national television where he has 4 sacks, gets within 0.5 sack, a half sack of Vernon Golston's season record of 14 set in 2007. He's had that moment to get everybody's attention. Yeah, these next 2 games after the off week are going to be cruisers, you would think, for Ohio State. But you talk about premier marquee games, hosting Penn State, playing at Michigan. When you know Michigan, the way it has bounced back now, Michigan is going to be desperate to beat Ohio State for the first time under Jim Harbaugh, and for only the 3rd time since 2000. I mean, are you crazy? Those are going to be marquee games, and that could be followed by, if Ohio State takes care of business, playing in the Big Ten championship game for the 3rd straight year. That's called a great stepping stone to New York City and the Heisman Trophy ceremony if Chase Young can continue to take care of business.
And I was thinking when you were talking about the most important and the most valuable, there's never any doubt. Everyone knows how important having a quarterback is, and that's why this award has skewed towards that. But I just looked back 1 year ago, and what happened when Nick Bosa was removed from that Ohio State defense. He turned out, I mean, through 2.5 games, and the touchdown and the sacks and the 4 fumbles, there was some of that Heisman talk for him,
of course,
in September. And who knows what he could have done if he'd stayed healthy. Especially if Chase Young had got healthy as that season went on and they were playing out there together, what could have happened for him in a Heisman push. But when you removed him from that Ohio State defense, everything crumbled. Everything was built around that one guy. So when you talk about the importance, sometimes it can be the defensive guy and not the one who touches it every snap, but it's more rare than anything else. And that's you make a great point there. And it's even hard now. You know, when you look back at what Eddie got to do and the number of times, the volume of touches he got in the carries, J.K. Dobbins doesn't even get that. He also has to do a little bit extra to stand out, even when he's getting around 20 carries a game now. So it's tough, man. If you're a running back or a defensive end, that's a big hill to climb. But these guys are both doing it.
But like I said, the only thing I'm pointing out is the opportunity is going to be there for him to impress the voters.
Yep, you're right. Yep.
Now you have to go get the job done. You know, and getting back to what you're talking about there is we keep talking about Chase Young, this and that. I'm telling you, the development of Devon Hamilton and Jayshon Cornell, the attention, Haskell Garrett has come along that way. Tommy Togiai, B.B. Landers, the energy he plays with, though, that has enhanced the Chase Young effect, because there were times Saturday, again, that ransacking in the rain, I like saying that because it sounds cool, against Wisconsin, when Wisconsin seemed more concerned with Haskell Garrett or Ja'Shawn Cornell or Devon Hamilton than they were Chase Young, because Chase Young's out there on the edge. These guys are right in our face. And that I'm telling you, that front is playing like Eddie George said. This may be the best defense he has seen at Ohio State. Definitely in what you call the spread era, the wide open era, it probably is the best defense Ohio State has put on the field.
I thought Saturday was one of the best games from B.B. Landers that I could remember, and he's had a hard time getting through injuries and being healthy. I'm not sure people even really understand how much he's been banged up trying to get on the field, and that's kept him in some games from being part of that rotation as prominently as he wanted to be. But you went through those names. I mean, Cornell is somebody that I think people always want the instant impact. Who's the freshman that's going to play? And 5 years ago, that was Cornell, and it didn't happen until now. Ohio State has benefits greatly when they have these seniors take the next step. Look at Brandon Bowen. Look at Ja'Shawn Cornell. Look at what's happened to some of these other veterans. Jordan Fuller is a senior. He showed that great promise a couple years ago. Took a little bit of a step back. Having seniors on your team is good. And this team has it, right? They have that 2017 recruiting class is one of the greatest in college football history. That doesn't mean that the next year they're going to be ready to play. So they have guys that are in their second year that have the experience, but they also have some veterans who stuck through some growing pains and learned how to do it and are now really performing at a high level. They have the perfect sort of mix of experience and young talent pushing them from behind and the ability to rotate. People seem to hate that. Like, why is Tuff Borland on the field, or why are they playing 6 wide receivers? Because they're all good.
Plus, they have this. They have experience. They've become smart football players. The more experience you get, the smarter you look. Number 3, I'm just sitting there beaming like a proud father that just had his first kid, because I keep reminding people about this team.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the stars. It wasn't just the freshmen who've come in, like Garrett Wilson and Jameson Williams, by the way, who's going to play. I keep saying he's going to play a bigger role as it goes on.
He had a couple chances out there where Field sees him.
Yeah, Zack Harrison, who's rising now partly because of opportunity, but now he's showing why he's considered a 5-star a year ago. But you've got these guys in between, these embedded players, as I've called them, who are rising to the fore in their junior and senior years, and you're seeing the fruition of a big-time program. Damon Arnett is a much better player than he was a year ago. He may not agree with that, but I don't.
He actually does.
Jeffrey Okudah, without a doubt, is. I think Jordan Fuller's better, even though he was damn good last year. You're Tuff Borland. People like to rank on Tuff Borland. Malik Harrison. I mean, he's a quiet, big-time factor.
Yeah.
Is the best way of putting it, because he makes 2 or 3 plays a game where you go, man, how can he? But the reason you don't dominate every play, just like Chase Young doesn't dominate every play, is sometimes the play doesn't come your way, But he's playing his responsibility. And his first tackle last week on a wide play, Wisconsin's first possession out on the edge, and you and Zach Bourne broke that down in your little thing, but that set the tone for the day.
Yeah.
It was 3rd and short, and Ohio State stoned them. And Malik Harrison, with the help from his friends, Tuff Borland. So that's what you're seeing about this team, which is why it has legs. It has legs in this college football playoff race, and I think it's going to take them places.
I wish that one time I could successfully get Tuff Borland to say I told you so to people, or acknowledge the criticism and pat himself on the back.
He does have that little bitty smirky smile.
Sometimes he smirks about it. He's one of the hardest nuts to crack in interviews that I've dealt with in a long time. I'm thinking he's like John Simon level, private and difficult to deal with, and I just want, like, one time, because I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago on your show, I got a little heated about the criticism Borland was taking and why he was out there, why he's so important. And Saturday was pretty good validation for that, for me, for taking up for him. So I can't even imagine, like, the sense of pride that he must feel. He must, because Damon Arnett is a guy who did acknowledge that in August during preseason camp when he said, I thought I was good, but I looked at the tape. I knew I wasn't. People told me that I wasn't, and I recognized the criticism and got better. So, Tough Borland, somewhere within him, I want to know his true thoughts on it because he's got to be immensely satisfied with the way he's playing.
If you and I were starting a SEAL Team 7 from John Simon would be on it.
Yeah.
Tough Borland would be on it because number one, they're going to do the job and then some. They're going to be, but they're going to keep quiet about it.
The secrets are going to the grave.
Yeah. Devon Hamilton would be on it. Devon Hamilton, man, watch him work, ladies and gentlemen. Watch him work in the middle of that defense. It's a factor big time. And those guys would be on it because they don't care what you think. They don't even care probably what their teammate. They just do their job, try to do their job. Tough Borland had some tough times last year, pardon the pun, without a doubt. You know why? Because he'd had his Achilles tendon repaired.
And he was playing for
4 months earlier.
He was playing in a horrible scheme and getting terrible fundamental instruction day to day. So,
a lot of that,
that stuff's over.
Yeah.
As Jeff Hafley told me, stop talking about last year. Okay.
Yeah. The chickens are out of the barn on that aspect. I think everybody can see what's happened. Let's get to that real quick.
Sure.
And then we're going to talk about the offense next week and what we see coming along because this is kind of taking its own little synergy here, this conversation. 4-4-3 to start the game.
Mm-hmm.
Number one. There's some thinking going on. Like I was talking with Eddie George about that. There's some thinking going on that side of the ball, creative thinking within a tough scheme. Greg Madison, Larry Johnson, Jeff Hafley, Matt Barnes. Without a doubt, Al Washington Jr. puts 4 linebackers. They put 4 linebackers on the field. Every week, I get more impressed by this coaching staff, the coaching staff that Ryan Day assembled. He had to assemble with one old piece, Larry Johnson, old as in, or leftover, not old as in aged.
Yep.
Although it's funny because I think if you put him and Greg Madison together, they probably add up to older than everybody else combined on that coaching staff. But I digress. No doubt about the creativity and the flexibility going on with that coaching staff.
And Chase Young, stand-up, walkabout linebacker, however you want to phrase it, moving him around to get matchups. It's terrifying enough for an offensive tackle to try and slow him down. But now they're letting him pick an alley. He's going one-on-one against a guard. Good night. They hadn't shown that all season. They saved this up until the Wisconsin game. Shows you that they've still got more tricks that they will put up their sleeve heading into the last 4 weeks. Well, they're going to have 3 weeks to prepare for Penn State. So who knows what else they'll show. Justin Hilliard rolling out there as the outside linebacker in that 4-4 that you talked about. I think that was on the first play of the game. I turned to you. I said, there's that 4-4, and Justin Hilliard's out there. It's like, okay, well, let's see, because we just talked about Tough Borland's Achilles injury. I did not think he would play this year.
I didn't either.
And he'd been back, I thought
he was done, actually, with all the injuries he's had.
There was,
I've got a story coming about him
There
later.
was some potential that, he could have been a graduate transfer if he'd stayed healthy through spring, and he wasn't maybe going to be as prominent in that, it never got to that point. And Justin Hilliard loves Ohio State, but it was an option for him, and he's somebody who had wanted to play for so long, and he's not going to be a starter for this team. That was never going to be in the cards, except turns out that he is in a 4-4, and he's got a start under his belt, and he makes a big tackle for loss.
What flashed through my mind when I watched that first play, and they're out there in that 4-4, is there's Justin Hilliard on the field, and there's Jayshon Cornell. Those guys both committed on the same day. I remember because I went down to the Justin Hilliard's commitment down there, Cincinnati Xavier, and we got Jayshon Cornell on the phone later. Just after that ceremony, and they were big buddies talking about and becoming factors on a big-time Ohio State football team. Look at them now. That's just those are just little snippets where you think back. Like I said about rising talent, give it time. Sometimes wine becomes pretty nice if you give it time. Sometimes it turns rancid, but most of the time, this has turned out to be a really nice.
And here's the thing: Ohio State is not
vintage.
Shopping on the bottom shelf for these wines. So if you have somebody who's
that's a good line,
a 4 or 5 star guy,
most
of those are going to age pretty nicely. If they have the patience. and I'm not just talking about the players, but the coaching staff as well, because you know how that works. It's got to be a two-way commitment for them to stay for that 5 years. So, these coaches know what they're doing. 90% of the time, the talent evaluations on the 4- and 5-star guys tend to be correct. And if they have the right head on their shoulders, and then you give a Larry Johnson, or in this case, Al Washington starting to get his crack at it, these guys' ability to work with really talented people who have experience and 4+ years of working with Mickey Marotti, holy smokes, this is the kind of stuff you get.
I told Justin Hilliard that play he made out on the edge where he beat the blocker. The tight end was supposed to come out and get him, beat the blocker, and then gets, I think it was Jonathan Taylor out on the edge. Matter of fact, I think you and Zach even broke that play down.
Mm-hmm.
I told him on Saturday after the game, I said, that was a flashback for me. And he goes, I said it was a flashback to your highlight videos from high school where all of a sudden there was this flash, pardon the pun, out of nowhere, and here's Justin Hilliard coming 100 miles an hour to make a play.
Right.
Like a heat-seeking missile, he was not going to miss. And that's, boy, as that comes along, see, those are things that are rising on this defense that Greg Madison, Jeff Hafley, Al Washington especially are paying attention to, guys who are coming of age right before our eyes, some of them later than other guys. And you're right, these are not bottom shelf wines here. This is mid-level, top shelf that is aged.
And it's the same situation.
I just like that analogy. Yeah. I'm using it way too much now.
I'm glad you set it up. I mean,
but you went with it.
Took it home. That's
you shopped. You took your shopping cart.
It's the 1-2 punch out here. But the same thing is true for Baron Browning. Now, he's not a fifth-year senior, but he's a 5-star talent that took some time and needed the right fit.
There you go.
And now look what's happening to him. You can find these examples all over the roster. And if it sounds like it's hyperbole from us or gushing or about this team, well, I don't know what to do about it because they are the most complete team in the country, and there are a bunch of stories that you look around and they feel good. Justin Hilliard going through, was it both biceps and Achilles, and it's such bad luck. Him fighting through that and getting back on the field, making a tackle for loss against Wisconsin and a Heisman Trophy candidate. You don't have to be a robot to cover the team. You feel good for kids like that.
Bad luck is missing the bus.
Sure.
We're talking about excruciating, coming back from painful situations that put your entire college football career in jeopardy. That's got another. That's definitely not bad luck. That's just like
cursed.
Yeah, but it's also wow. What kind of guts have you got? The toughness you've got, and then you get back. You're pretty much driven, I think, too, at some point in your career to show you're not a bust. That you are not. These things were not going to keep you down. Mm-hmm. Eventually, you're going to be a factor. Yeah. And what better time to have a 5-star finally being a factor than in his final year and making plays happen?
And that's, you see this a lot with Ohio State now, because for all the talk about wanting to play the true freshman right away, and they make an emphasis on it. You're looking at DeJuan Jones potentially doing that, so it should be maybe 6 or 7 guys that are going to go through.
Yeah, but he wasn't a 5-star. He was like when they signed him, like Berm said, what?
That one's a surprise. Garrett Wilson's going to play, but you look through, Terry McLaurin, Johnny Dixon, Chris Worley the year before that. You keep looking through, and these guys, they're not always 5-stars, but 4 or 5-star guys that are redshirting and staying through the 5th year.
Mm-hmm.
I know everybody wants to see the next big thing come out and perform, but often it's not the best thing for their development. Mm-hmm. Garrett Wilson is a special case. Jameson Williams' speed is certainly unique. And now it's turned out with DeJuan Jones, they could maybe do some creative things that have them thinking about that opportunity. Zack Harrison is a physical freak. That's the 1%, and it helps that Ohio State can recruit in that 1% more than other teams. But for most guys, even a second-year lineman, Nick Petit-Frere.
Nicholas Petit-Frere.
I'm trying to get it better. I'm sorry. It takes time for them to get good, and when you have the patience, that's what you want your program to be. Ohio State doesn't want to be a team that from year to year is relying on the ups and downs of 18 and 19-year-olds. If you get 21 and 22-year-old men out there who've gone through Mickey Marotti's mat drills 4 times, you're going to have a damn good team, and that's what they have right now. Ryan Day inherited a great situation, and Ohio State didn't upset the apple cart there with what Urban Meyer left. So it's not just Day. He's helped the offense. But the fact that you have Pantoni continuing, Mark Pantoni I'll get it right. I'm thinking about Petit
I know
Frere.
you're thinking about 20 names at once there.
Mark Pantoni, Ryan Stamper, Mickey Marotti. The fact that all those guys are still there in the program, you inherit the riches of these 4 and 5 year guys who've put in all the blood, sweat, and tear equity. That's what's so special about this team right now.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, and then, offensive line, like you talk about Brandon Bowen, Wyatt Davis, Josh Myers. They didn't know what to do with Josh Myers at the beginning.
Right.
I mean, Jonah Jackson. I mean, we talk about Justin Fields and his transfer. Jonah Jackson and his transfer were just as big, maybe not as impactful, but pretty damn close. Thayer Munford proving all the doubters wrong just because he had to switch schools in his high school and everybody forgot about him. Now you look at him. Josh Allaby, whether he'll come back from his little puffy knee, his puffy knee situation remains to be seen. But, it's right on down the line. There are guys stepping up who have put in the time, put in the work, dealt with hardships. And, we're going to be back. When we come back next week on this podcast, we're going to talk about the offense, what has really stood out to us from a development standpoint, like we did a couple of weeks ago during the off week, but we've seen even more. I mean, it's crazy. Just 2 games were very eye-opening against what I thought were pretty stout defenses. I mean, in a row, they've played against Michigan State, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. And the point of that is, 2 of those teams aren't very good. The other one, there's a little bit of question mark about now, although I think Wisconsin is pretty damn good.
Yeah, I think
but those are 3 defenses set up to stop the run, force you to go the hard way, and Ohio State has rooted all 3 of them out to get a big-time running game and augmenting it with a passing game. The steps that this team has taken offensively are ridiculous.
Let me ask you this before you shut it down for the day. Do you believe that Wisconsin will still come out of the West?
I think it's really interesting because I think Minnesota still has to play Penn State, if I'm not correct, right?
Yeah.
Really, Minnesota's toughest schedule is November. Without a doubt, 8-0 for the first time since 1941 or something ridiculous like that. Everybody makes fun of P.J. Fleck and the row the boat. The guy got it done at Western Michigan. He got him to a CFP game before he left for Minnesota. There's so much flash about him that people kind of get lost in the fact that evidently there's some substance there, big time. That team is playing extremely well right now. They've discovered offense with Tanner Morgan, their quarterback. They lost their number 1 quarterback in preseason camp, the Annexstad kid, and you're going, wow, they're done. They figured out ways to win those first 3 games, especially that Fresno State game.
Holy cow!
Oh my goodness! Now all of a sudden, who are they blowing out? They blew out Maryland.
The Rutgers.
I think the British blew out Maryland when they came in the War of 1812 before they came back, and the United States
birthplace of college football.
Yeah, reunited, reconnoitered, and got things together. But
all right, don't trestle me now. Is Wisconsin going to win the West?
I think there's a good chance because I think if Penn State beats Minnesota, then the Wisconsin-Minnesota game, which is always one of the Axe game, one of the great games out there, is going to be.
That'll be fun.
Yeah,
I hope that it's on the line.
That is the Axe game, man. It's not Wisconsin-Michigan, is it?
No, it is.
It's Wisconsin.
Paul Bunyan's Axe.
I get all those mixed up.
Minnesota finally got it. P.J. Fleck. Last year Wisconsin struggles.
Yeah.
For all the stuff I said about Wisconsin, they've turned it around pretty nicely this year.
Yeah.
The Illinois game was a huge debacle for them, and it's out of character for their program, generally speaking. What happened on Saturday, though, was not. I just don't think that the Badgers can get to the same level as
you
Ohio
ask
State.
Anybody on the Ohio State offensive or defensive lines, though, that was a battle.
They paid a price.
They paid a price.
Yep.
And like we've talked about, I'm looking at this Ohio State schedule, and boy, it's, for one another term, you got a couple of cupcakes. A couple of cupcakes. I like the way that sounds. I might start a store like that. Couple of cupcakes. Top of the muffin to you. But a couple of cupcakes.
What are you going to do with the rest of the muffin?
Maryland and Rutgers. Yeah, we'll get to Kramer to take them away for me. But I digress. But then there's a potential, if they take care of business, you got Penn State, Michigan, and a possible rematch with Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. Those are going to be 3 ridiculously physical games in a row for an Ohio State football team. It's I don't know if you agree, but, if they run that gauntlet, they deserve everything they have coming to them.
There's no question. It's not like this is the ACC or something and Clemson gets to skate to the finish line. Ohio State is going to have to earn it. The SEC, that when their slogans and catchphrase about, how much it means at the end of the year.
I'm holding up my hand because people get mad when I interrupt you. One guy in particular, which I'd like to meet him in an alley one of these days, but I digress.
It's your show. You can interrupt me whenever you want.
Quick quiz. Who does Alabama play the week before it plays Auburn?
Well, I know the answer because I've heard you saying it every week. So that's going to be a huge slugfest with Western Carolina.
Western Carolina. Not only is Western Carolina bad, it may be one of the worst teams in the FCS.
Yeah.
So don't talk to me about gauntlets. Go ahead.
And you and I get this all the time when people jump into our Twitter missions or emails or whatever. Ohio State's schedule to this point at 8-0 is still the toughest that any unbeaten team has played. It's not like they've walked through. They beat everybody by 20-plus points or whatever it is for 8 straight weeks. The only time somebody's done that in the Big Ten in, 80 years, whatever it is. They're beating good teams. Cincinnati's going to finish in the top 25. They beat the doors off of them. Wisconsin, you're talking about, they can still win the West. They had one upset. They're 6-2, but they're still in the top 25 because everyone can see how good that team is in their defense. Whatever. Northwestern go on the road. Northwestern sucks this year.
Yeah.
That's still not an easy place to play, and they get credit for that. You look at I'm just using the Sagarin rankings there. They're number 1 in strength of schedule amongst unbeaten teams.
Well, but I'll tell you what, LSU's had the 3 more impressive wins of the season so far.
That's fair.
If I was looking at the top 10 right now, if I was voting, I don't vote in any of the polls, but if I was voting, I would have in my mind a conundrum, LSU or Ohio State for number 1, because Ohio State has been incredibly impressive every game it's played, but LSU has 3 impressive victories. I think I would put LSU there because the big games are what matter. Although Ohio State's coming off a 38-7 bushwhacking of a team that some people were thinking could make a run for the national championship 3 weeks ago until reality struck. I would have probably LSU, Ohio State, and then I would have Alabama because I can see Alabama coming on, etc. And then I would have maybe Clemson. Clemson with the easiest path to the college football playoff.
Gosh, yeah.
Their toughest test is going to be Wake Forest in a couple of weeks. Wake Forest is ranked. They've only got one loss.
Wake Forest.
Well, I'm just telling you.
I know.
Wake Forest, the campus is about as big as this room. But bottom line is they do have but that's where they were last year too, and they got the job done.
Here's what's great about the 1 and 2 argument, which is going to start next Tuesday. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Because LSU would go to Atlanta, and Ohio State's going to go to Phoenix.
What matters is the matchup you get because you'll get 2 gets 3, 1 gets 4.
You're going to have to beat 2 good teams to win the national championship either way. And if Ohio State is number 1, guess what? They're going to want to go to Phoenix anyway because they're going to be playing one of those Southeastern teams. They have a huge fan base. They always turn out. They know the Fiesta Bowl. That will be their preference. Whether they're number 1 or number 2, they're going to Phoenix. They're not going to Atlanta.
I wish I'd bought a timeshare out there a long time ago because I've been to Phoenix how many times covering Ohio State football since 2000. It's crazy.
And I'm not just saying that they're going there because I love the Camelback and it's the best hospitality suite of any bowl game that's in existence.
Yeah. Don't mention all that stuff.
That's what's going to happen. So, people are going to get upset. They're going to look at it. That's part of the fun of college football. Who's number 1? Who's number 2? You make a great case for LSU at number 1. I don't argue with it. But by the end of the year, you just talked about that gauntlet at the end. Ohio State will have earned a potential number 1 ranking. I think they're the most complete team. LSU has had more chances to maybe prove it.
Wait a minute, though. If LSU runs the table, LSU.
Okay.
They will have beaten Alabama. They will have. They will have
short-handed Alabama.
They would have won.
Short-ankled.
They would have won the SEC championship.
All right.
But I think that would be a definite conundrum. I like using that word.
But again,
for the committee,
when they sit down and they're making that, they're going to know that. We're sending LSU to Atlanta and Ohio State's going there.
Right.
And flip a coin between 3. Who cares about that?
Yeah, it's funny because Ohio State in that scenario, Ohio State ends up in Phoenix. You got to figure either way, right? Or in Scottsdale.
Well, I can tell you they will want Clemson so badly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody always makes these comparisons and talks about Bama. They beat Bama in the Sugar Bowl. They're not worried about Alabama. And I'm not saying that to dismiss their program. The team that they want some blood from is Clemson. Twice in the last 6 years, what happened in the Orange Bowl and what happened the last time in that Fiesta Bowl.
And don't forget what happened in the Gator Bowl, Woody Hayes' last game.
That is the team they want more than anything.
Yeah.
So however they get it, I'm telling you, that's the one.
But I'm telling you, the possibilities of the playoff, and we'll end it with this. I mean, you can comment on this. Ohio State versus LSU versus Joe Burrow. Are you kidding me? Ohio State versus Clemson. Are you kidding me? Ohio State versus Alabama. Are you kidding me? You talk about somebody wanting somebody. That's Alabama wanting Ohio State.
I don't want to fast forward through a potential top 5 matchup with Penn State. I'm looking forward to that, but boy, those storylines for December, bring that on.
Well, you know what? That comes to the end of our podcast, and ladies and gentlemen, do not think that I've forgotten about my challenge of myself a week ago when I talked about the UZ and how the UZ would my official scorekeeper, Spencer Holbrook, the glue man, came up with, I think the number was 8, but I think I went back and did a recount. I think I had some slippery ones in there last week,
and I
think I'm up into the 17s or 18s for last week. I totally forgot I'd even made that pledge this week, and so I probably am up into double digits. But I'll have a little pot sitting back here next week to show you the $1 bills where I'm making it rain for the Christina and Ryan Day charity to help out for adolescent and youth mental well-being. It's a great charity to be a part of.
Yep.
I hope to give as little as possible to it. I hate to say that. I might do a matching thing with maybe a restaurant or somebody around town. But Boston, it's always a pleasure having you on my podcast, as you well know. A regular mentor. You're sort of.
I'm just happy.
I'm not going to say you're my Ed McMahon. You're more like my guest host Jay Leno, with Johnny Carson.
Well, I'm not trying to steal your spot.
Yeah, but you do a very good job of making a shadow. So. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I've really enjoyed this. Special thanks to Eddie George for joining the show. 1995 Heisman Trophy winner. Still one of the great individuals I've ever met in my life. We'll be back next week when Boston and I, among other things, we break down the Ohio State offense. Where can it go from here? Knock on wood. Justin Fields has stayed healthy through 8 games. He's taken a licking, but kept on ticking. And so we'll move on from there. But until then, this is Tim May. Again, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buckeye IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.